At 6:47 a.m., the sharp clang of bolt cutters shattered the quiet street. An HOA Karen leaned over my chained Jeep, declaring victory. But what she didn't know was chilling. This wasn't just my ride. It was a federal task force vehicle, and she just triggered hell. My name's Rodriguez, Army Reserve MP and newly accepted into a federal drug task force. A few months back, I inherited my grandma's house in Willowbrook Estates. First, it felt like a blessing. Quiet streets, perfectly trimmed lawns, sprinklers hissing on schedule. Every house the same shade of beige. It looked like suburban paradise, until you scratched the surface. That's when the smell of mulch gave way to something else. Control. See, Willowbrook had an HOA president named Bethany Kensington Wright. Neighbors just called her Karen. She measured grass height with a ruler. She fined families for leaving Christmas lights up in January. And after 7 years in power, she acted less like a community volunteer and more like a suburban dictator. For me, inheriting Grandma's home meant stability. A place to honor her memory, maybe rent it while deployed. For Karen, though, it was new territory to conquer. She didn't know I was military, didn't know my Jeep was part of active operations. To her, it was just an eyesore. To me, it was government property loaded with federal surveillance gear. And that little misunderstanding was about to escalate into all-out war. The Jeep sat proudly in Grandma's driveway, matte black with law enforcement decals. Inside, encrypted radios, covert cameras, GPS trackers, gear worth more than most homes' kitchens. To me, it wasn't just a ride. It was a tool in ongoing cartel investigations. But to Karen, it was unacceptable. 2 weeks after deployment, an email hit my inbox. Violation notice. Unauthorized commercial vehicle. Apparently, my government-issued Jeep fell under her interpretation of HOA bylaws. The fine? $50 a day. My sister Maya, sweet, patient middle school teacher, tried reasoning with her. She brought my deployment orders, offered to cover the Jeep with a tarp, even explained federal property laws. Karen just sneered. Rules are rules. Maybe this neighborhood isn't right for your family. That one sentence cut deeper than any notice. Because we weren't the only ones. Maya discovered that every military family in Willowbrook had been targeted. A Marine family fined for a motorcycle. A Navy wife harassed over garden gnomes. One by one, military households were pushed to the edge. But here's the kicker. Buried in the original HOA bylaws was an exemption for military and law enforcement vehicles. Karen wasn't enforcing rules. She was inventing them. And she thought no one would dare challenge her authority. Karen's campaign didn't stop at fines. She escalated. Threats of liens on Grandma's house landed in Maya's mailbox. Hints that Carl, her husband on city council, could make Maya's teaching job difficult. Whisper campaigns spread through the neighborhood. That Rodriguez Jeep makes the street unsafe. Meanwhile, neighbors stayed silent. Fear had settled in. People whispered over fences but never spoke up. Karen thrived on intimidation. And Maya, left alone while I was overseas, carried the weight of it all. One night, during a grainy video call from my outpost, Maya's voice cracked. Tank! She threatened to take Grandma's house. She even said supporting us could affect my job. I clenched my fists, tasting desert sand and rage. Grandma's words echoed in my mind. Stand up to bullies, but do it the right way. The discovery came days later. Digging through Grandma's old HOA documents, Maya found the truth. Military vehicles were explicitly protected. Karen wasn't just cruel. She was fabricating violations, counting on families being too scared or too busy to fight back. And when Maya traced back past violations, a pattern emerged. Every single military family, every widow, every elderly resident who couldn't resist, they were being cleared out. This wasn't about grass length. It was about power, money, and discrimination. The morning it happened, Maya's panicked call jolted me awake in a tent 8,000 miles away. Her voice shook. Tank, there's a tow truck circling the block. They're eyeing your Jeep. My stomach dropped. Then came the sound. Clang. The sharp bite of bolt cutters echoed through Maya's phone. Karen, in a bathrobe, was cutting through my heavy-duty security chain. Neighbors peeked through blinds as sparks flew. Each metallic snap sounded like a gunshot in suburban silence. She barked orders at the tow driver, shoving cash in his hand. But the man froze when he saw the decals. "Lady, this is government property. I'm not touching that." He backed away, tires screeching as he fled the scene. Karen, red-faced and trembling, screamed, "I'm HOA president. I have authority to remove violations, even federal ones." But what she didn't know was that my Jeep wasn't just chained. It was wired. Federal task force vehicles have GPS trackers, kill switches, and tamper alerts built into their systems. The moment her bolt cutters snapped that lock, an automatic federal alert rippled through Homeland Security databases. And while Karen thought she'd scored a neighborhood victory, she had just committed a federal felony in broad daylight. By the time Maya's video hit my inbox, alarms were already blaring in government channels. Cutting locks on federal task force equipment isn't petty vandalism. It's national security. Homeland Security flagged the Jeep. Federal marshals were dispatched. And every second of Karen's bolt cutter circus was captured on the Jeep's hidden cameras. But Karen wasn't done. In a move that cemented her downfall, she rushed to the community gate and changed the locks, blocking law enforcement entry. If he wants his precious Jeep back, he can go through HOA procedures, she shouted, waving the keys like a suburban warlord. Neighbors had finally seen enough. Mrs. Patterson, a frail widow who'd lost 2 military sons, called every veteran on her street. By 10 a.m., a human shield of neighbors surrounded the Jeep. Vietnam vets, retired officers, families Karen had bullied for years. "This stops today," one declared. "You'll have to go through 30 veterans first." Meanwhile, Maya uncovered more dirt. HOA funds siphoned into Carl's development company. Letters where Karen argued military families lower property values. Fraud, embezzlement, discrimination, an entire web of corruption. Karen thought she was fighting one soldier. What she didn't realize was she'd awakened a community. And now she'd triggered the full weight of federal law. Maya's teacher instincts turned detective. She organized neighbors, collected violation letters, snapped photos of Karen trespassing. What she built wasn't just a folder, it was a federal case file. Buried in HOA records, she found the smoking gun. Contracts showing Carl's company had pre-sold neighborhood homes to developers. Targeted families weren't accidents, they were obstacles to profit. This wasn't harassment. It was organized crime. Neighbors who once whispered now marched openly. Veterans patrolled streets. Parents held signs, "Protect military families." For the first time, Karen's empire cracked. The fear she'd used for years collapsed under the weight of truth. When federal marshals arrived, the showdown was inevitable. Karen stood at the locked gate, arms crossed, screaming, "HOA rules override federal law. You have no jurisdiction here." Marshal Torres, calm but fierce, replied, "Ma'am, you've obstructed federal justice. Open the gate, or we'll open it for you." Karen refused. Handcuffs clicked a moment later, her defiance draining as cameras captured it all. Carl tried slipping out the back, only to run headfirst into agents. The neighborhood cheered as the tyrants fell. Years of fear lifted in one morning. Karen wasn't going to another HOA meeting. She was going to federal prison. Bethany Kensington Wright, HOA Karen, was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Her husband Carl? 6 years, barred from public office forever. Their empire of intimidation crumbled. Willowbrook transformed. Maya, elected HOA president by overwhelming support, rewrote bylaws to protect military families. Neighbors once divided now celebrated freedom in a new veteran memorial park, built on the site of Karen's seized home. And my Jeep? Still rolling, still part of federal operations, but now a symbol in the neighborhood. A reminder of what happens when arrogance meets accountability. So here's the takeaway. Bullies thrive on fear, but crumble when people stand united. Karen thought she could cut through a chain. What she really cut into was a federal case file. What about you? If someone tried to steal your property, how would you fight back? Drop a flag emoji in the comments, I'll be reading.